Welcome. Thank you all for showing up today. We do have some people who are planning to join us online. So we're going to be trying to use the microphone. I almost said microscope. The microphone for all speakers and also for any question askers. And I believe we're going to wait till the end of all the presentations to take questions. But thank you for being here. This is part of our research lecture series here at Fort Worth Botanic Garden and the Botanical Research Institute of Texas. This is, we do regular monthly lectures the first Tuesday of every month, but we also like to spot in opportunities for local colleagues and students to speak. So this is actually part of our research. This is a research lecture and part of our student research series. So with that, any other introduction, I'm just going to hand this off to Brent. Thanks.
Thank you, Brooke. So hi, my name is Brendan Levy. I'm an assistant professor at TCU in the Department of Environmental and Sustainability Studies. And so I just want to give you a brief overview of how this came together and why we're here. So I think it was a year ago, or maybe it was in the fall, that Dr. Ashley Coles, who's at TCU, invited me over to BRIT to meet with Seth and Keith in the room. And then working with them, we came up with this class here. And so it's a service learning and environmental science and sustainability is the big class. And so within this class, students can do different projects with local community partners. And so this time it is with the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens and BRIT. And so we're really excited to be here. What you're going to see are the results of a semester's worth of work in the South Woods. I'm really proud of the students. They're all undergraduate students. Some of them are graduating tomorrow, and some will be around for a little bit longer. But they're going to tell you about their experience, and they're going to give you the results of their research. So there will be 3 presenters, and I'll hand it off to the first presenter, which is Katie Mann.
Okay, so as Dr. Levy said, I'm Katie, and we're going to be going over the ecosystem services of trees in the South Woods. Okay, so today we're going to be going over our acknowledgements, introduction, methods, limitations, results, discussions, and conclusion. So to start off with our acknowledgements, members of the BRIT and the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens, Seth Hamby, Director of Living Collections, Brooke Best, Director of Texas Plant Conservation, Keith Brock, Director of Horticulture, and all members of BRIT and the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens, as well as our speakers, Jared Hall, Natural Resources Manager, City of Fort Worth Parks Department, Andrew Lloyd, Plant Pathologist, Bartlett Tree Services, and Gareth Harrier, Local Manager and Arborist Representative, Bartlett Tree Services. And then our team members, if you will wave when I say your name, Zoe, Audrey, Reese, me, Emma, Gisela, Megan, Elise, Tristan's not here, and then Julia. So to start off our introduction, which is going to be the benefits of urban forests. So we have our environmental benefits, economic benefits, and social benefits. So environmental benefits is things like reducing air pollution, supporting stormwater runoff, things like that. Economic benefits is, increasing property values, tax revenues, and influencing consumer behavior. And then social benefits, when there's trees, increases physical activities, which reduces heart rate and heart disease, and then reduces stress and improves social cohesion. So now the backbone of our research here, which is going to be ecosystem services, which is the benefits that trees contribute to ecosystem services that support human well-being and environmental health. So there's 4 kind of categories of ecosystem services, which is supporting, regulating, provisioning, and cultural. And I have some examples of each. So supporting services, which is nutrient cycling. Trees cycle nutrients by absorbing them from the soil, incorporating them into their biomass, and releasing them back into the ecosystem through leaf litter and decomposition. Photosynthesis, which is where trees convert sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water into energy through photosynthesis, producing oxygen as a byproduct and supporting the food web. Then we're going to move into regulating services, which is kind of what we were mainly looking at through our research here. So climate regulation, trees absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, helping mitigate climate change by storing carbon and releasing oxygen through photosynthesis. Air quality regulation, trees remove pollutants such as carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter from the air, improving air quality and human health. Then we have water regulation. So trees play a crucial role in regulating the water cycle by intercepting rainfall, reducing runoff, and stabilizing soil erosion. They also help regulate local hydrological conditions and groundwater recharge. And then we also have flood control, where forests act as natural buffers against floods by absorbing and slowing down the flow of water, reducing the risk of flooding in downstream areas. Moving into provisioning services, we have things like timber, so trees provide wood for construction. Food, there are trees that produce things that humans and wildlife consume. And then finally, cultural services such as recreation. So trees and forests provide opportunities for outdoor recreation. And then aesthetic beauty, trees enhance the visual appeal of landscapes, parks, urban areas, contributing to aesthetic enjoyment and mental well-being. So to kind of wrap that all up is trees play a significant role in the production of ecosystem services and work to support human well-being and environmental health. So kind of the numbers game of our ecosystem services research. So population and urbanization projections for 2060 with urban forestry is currently 404 million people live in the, not currently, in 2060, 404 million people will live in the United States. And then 90.4% of that population will live in urban areas. And then as a result, 3% of urban expansion is expected to double, but currently we have 3% of our land in urban areas, and that's expected to double by 2060. And then urbanization's environmental effects is reduction in biodiversity, increased air and water pollution, more soil erosion, and energy consumption. And then finally, for urbanization and trees, there's currently about 3.8 billion trees. 90% of those are on private property. And with these current growth projections, that's a loss of about 36 million trees per year. So kind of an intro with botanic gardens is the role of botanic gardens in preserving urban forests to accrue their benefits. So botanic gardens provides the space and the care that many forests need to be able to live through any outside pressures that they might have within the urban environment. Through botanical gardens, horticultural knowledge, and training, in addition to their public credibility and outreach, they allow urban forests to prosper. Now I'm going to hand it over to Reese.
Okay. So for our purposes, let me introduce myself. I'm Reese Reeder. And then for our purposes, first, we're going to calculate the ecosystem services and determine their annual benefits and replacement values of trees within the South Woods. We're going to educate the visitors on ecosystem services of trees within the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens, promote community engagement, and advocate for responsible management practices of local ecosystems. So for our data collection, so we did our work in the South Woods, which is located along Rock Springs Road and University Drive. It was a total plot area of 6.27 hectares, or about 15.49 acres. And then these were divided into 0.15 hectare grids of 42 smaller plots total. There we go. Okay. So for our method, so we used data collection. We measured the trees in the Southwoods. We did this by using iTree Eco to calculate the ecosystem services of our measured trees. We did carbon storage, carbon sequestration, avoided runoff, pollution avoided, oxygen produced, and replacement value. So once these were found, we used an analysis to determine if there was any differences between the ecosystem services per grid surveyed. And if there was not, we were able to estimate our ecosystem services for the entire Southwoods, which provided our total ecosystem services for the Southwoods urban forest. So these, like I said earlier, these were divided into 0.15 hectare grids and gave us a total of 42 hectares, or 42 smaller grids, sorry. We used a systematic sampling technique to select the grids for our trees, which gave us these 9 highlighted grids located. Perfect. And then, so we collected our field work from February to April, and then we backtracked to identify species that we needed. Due to it starting in April, there was no leaves, so they were a little bit difficult to identify then. We identified species using Sibley's Guide to Trees, Trees of Texas Field Guide, 2nd edition, and iNaturalist. And then we measured the DBH of trees, only those above 6 inches using a diameter tape, measured height using a laser rangefinder, and then recorded coordinates using a Trimble GPS unit and ArcMaps. So once we collected our data, we had a total of 142 trees collected. We can see most of those trees were in the northern portion, and then they were a little bit more sporadic and near the south end. Sorry. So iTree Eco, for those unfamiliar, is a collaborative effort between the USDA Forest Service and other forestry and tree companies. And it just really helps estimate the ecosystem services provided by not only individual trees, but ecosystem and forests and all. So like I said earlier, we used carbon storage, which was calculated in pounds, carbon sequestration in pounds per year, avoided runoff in gallons per year, pollution removal in ounces per year, oxygen produced in pounds per year, and finally replacement value in USD. So we compiled these descriptive statistics of trees and ecosystems by grid, and then we checked for any differences between the grids across all ecosystem services, and we were able to use that to estimate the total ecosystem services provided across the Southwoods. So we did have a few limitations and some challenges we faced throughout this project. So first, like I said earlier, determining the species of the trees, and because of lack of identifying features, and we started in winter. We only used 3 parameters from iTree Eco, species, DBH, and height for our estimates. You are able to use other parameters such as live tree height, crown light exposure, canopy length, and % canopy missing. If we would have used those, it would have been a little bit more accurate. And then finally, there was some variability amongst the grids that were not measured. And because of this, there is some uncertainty associated with our estimates. So finally, for our results, everybody's favorite part. So for the number of species, we measured 15 different species, with our top species being the green ash at 29.5% of our total trees, or 42 individuals. Our American elm was at 19%, or 27 individuals, and finally our pecan at 15.5%, or 22 individuals. So our species with the largest average DPH, our #1 tree was the sweet gum at 26.5 inches. If you remember, I did not mention that in our most frequent trees. There was actually only 1 sweet gum. #2 was our holly at 23.5, and that was also only 1 individual. And then finally, we do have our pecan at 21.1 inches. And so finally, we see one that had quite a few individuals. So our species with the tallest average height, #1 is our pecan at 55.7 feet, followed by that one very large sweet gum at 53.3 feet, and then a bur oak at 51.0 feet, and that was 3 individuals. So we did run a Kirk-Wallace test because we did find some slight variations, we found our data to distribution to be slightly non-normal. So we used the non-parametric test to compare the differences between the ecosystem services across the grids. And then we found that there was no statistically significant differences between the ecosystem services assessed amongst any of the grids. And because of that, we were able to estimate for the total 42 plots from those 9 studied areas.
Hello, oh, that was loud. My name is Audrey Hafner, and I'm going to continue with our results and conclude us out. So to kind of have a visualization of our results, we made box and whisker plots for each of the plots. And this is just kind of to see the distribution and spread of our data that these ecosystem services provide in our results from iTreeEco. So this one is specifically carbon storage per year. And so per grid, we found that the grids themselves on average store 23,000 pounds per year. And if we put all the grids together, that would be 980,000 pounds per year, which is about 900 or 490 tons. And just for an equivalent, that's about taking 106 cars off the road for a year. And we also just wanted to point out some of the outliers that we have that store a lot of carbon, specifically in plot BC, the red oak, and also the really big pecan tree in plot F5. So then this one was our carbon sequestration box and whisker plot. You can see that outlier is the American elm in plot C6. And per the carbon sequestration on average per grid is 639 pounds per year. And so with all the grids put together, our estimate is that it is 26,840 pounds per year. And that would be about 13.42 tons, or that is equal to over 13 male bison, or about 28,500 round trips from TCU to the Fort Worth Botanic Garden, which would be very fun, but the carbon sequestration is better. Yeah. Okay, so for avoided runoff, we're kind of going to see some of the same outliers throughout this, just because some of the trees were so big and provided a lot of ecosystem services individually. So we have, once again, that really big red oak in plot B6 that avoided runoff. That one tree is 769 gallons per year. And then that green ash is more than that, 807 per year. So per grid, we had found an average that each grid runoff avoided was 4,190 gallons per year, which would sum up to 176 gallons per year, which is a lot of runoff avoided. And if you are a part of the Stanley Cup epidemic that is going on right now, that would be filling over 500,000 Stanley Cups, which is a lot of runoff avoided per year, a lot of hydration if you fill up your Stanley Cup that many times. So then we have pollution removal. And once again, we see that red oak and the green ash that are just really helping the Southwoods ecosystem services. So per grid on average, it was 285 ounces per year per grid. And that summed up to 11,977 ounces per year. That is about 750 pounds. And that is about the estimate of a large grizzly bear. Okay, so then for oxygen production, we see the American elm that we saw, I believe, carbon sequestration. And per grid per year, we found that 1,700 gallons per year, which estimates to 71,000 pounds per year, which is about 35 tons. And because we have the theme of the dinosaurs outside, that is about 4.5 T-Rexes. It would be better if it was 5 because we don't want to see 0.5 T-Rexes. And then our replacement value, something that we kind of focused on for our ecosystem services. Once again, we see that red oak and pecan, that we've seen the red oak and then we saw the pecan for the carbon storage. So per grid, each grid on average, the replacement value is about $81,000. And the whole Southwoods, we estimated that to 3.42 million US dollars. And that is, with $3 million, you could buy an island off the coast of Scotland. I believe if it had 7 houses and a pub. So if I had $3 million, I would buy that. Also, if you're a Lana Del Rey fan, Lana Del Rey's Malibu beach home is also $3 million. So the Southwoods trees are the equivalent of an island and Lana Del Rey's beach house. we can move on. Okay. So we also wanted to focus on the ash trees because that was out of the plots that we measured the most frequent tree that we found. It was about 30% of our data. And out of the 142 trees that we did measure, it was 42 trees. And we definitely did not measure all the ash trees in the South Woods. And because we wanted to highlight this as a species of concern is due to the emerald ash borer that is affecting these trees and killing them. The emerald ash borer is native to Asia, but it came here to Michigan of all places on untreated wood, and it is slowly moving down the United States. And these beetles affect the trees by their larvae burrowing into the phloem and the inner layers, and it affects the nutrient transplant. And so if the ash trees don't get nutrients, they die. And so sadly, you can see in that map, it has traveled from Michigan all the way to Texas, and it was recently found, as I assume you guys might know, in the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. And there are treatments. There is okay. So once again, 30% of our trees were measured. The dots highlight the trees that we found that we measured, but just from being in the South Woods, they're all along the A grids and up past Rock Springs Road. So we didn't measure all the ash trees, and we still measured a lot. And then there's also some outliers within the South Woods, but they're mostly concentrated up in that area. And so we found that just these 42 ash trees alone store 420 pounds of carbon, and they sequester 2,016 pounds of carbon per year. And if we were to lose those 42 trees, it would be a replacement value of $236,000, which is a lot of money for those 42 trees. And there's many more ash trees. Like I was saying, there is treatment. There's insecticide called mectinite, and this injection acts as a barrier to the beetles, and it prevents their further burrowing into the phloem. And but this is very, very expensive. So 1 quart of mectinite costs $464, and how the quart of mectinite works is it goes off of tree DBH. So if you have really big trees with a large DBH, 1 quart could only treat like 3 or 4 trees. It depends on the DBH. So we calculated with all the DBH of the ash trees that we measured was 820 inches total, which is 5 quarts of mectinite, which equaled to about $2,000. And the thing about the mectinite is that it is effective, but you have to do it every 2 years. So it is continuous, and that's a lot of money. And if you want to treat all the ash trees in South Woods alone, and that's just a little area with ash trees, it's going to be really expensive. And then it's going to be expensive every 2 years. So just to kind of wrap up and really hit home on the ecosystem services that we were calculating, with our statistics, I hope you can see that they really just offer a lot of benefits to human well-being and environmental health in Fort Worth, and just trees everywhere. And you can see how they support, regulate, provision, and also the cultural aspect that some people might not think about when they're thinking about the services that trees do. So that's the recreational, educational, spiritual, cultural values that are really important to people when they go out and see trees. And these ecosystem services just greatly benefit the urban city because, I mean, we're around urbanization all day being in Fort Worth. And so when you come to a place like the Fort Worth Botanic Garden, it's just really important for those cultural aspects. And then also the ash trees are at risk in the South Woods, even if some of them are being treated. But we found that the South Woods is very diverse. So God forbid the ash trees, some of them do die. The South Woods and the Botanic Garden will still thrive with the other trees. And then our conclusion, once again, trees provide a wealth of ecosystem services that provide both instrumental and intrinsic values, such as the values that I just said, like the cultural values, supporting, regulating. And without areas like the South Woods and the whole Fort Worth Botanic Garden, the ecosystem services that are provided to Fort Worth and the urban areas like this would be reduced greatly. And then just understanding the replacement value of trees not only shows the monetary value that it has, but also the role that they play in environmental sustainability, human well-being, and quality of urban life overall. So we do want to continue doing future work. Probably won't be us, it'll be another set of students, sadly. But we would like to measure the rest of the South Woods, maybe have more students out there, or just keep going through the grids, because we found it takes more time than we thought it would in the beginning. So we want to measure all the trees, make other species observations, maybe include like the crown height, the other things that we can add into iTree Eco, just so we have more accurate data to present to everyone. And then we also want to document how visitors use the South Woods as a part of the cultural ecosystem services that we were talking about, just to have some qualitative data instead of quantitative, to show how important places like the South Woods and the Fort Worth Botanic Garden, just one section of the Botanic Garden, are to people, visitors that come. Okay, and then finally, the first day we were here, after we listened to Mr. Hamby talk, we got to go into the Botanic Garden, and Dr. Levy asked us to meditate and identify species, write it down, but also write haikus. We all laughed, but now we love it, and we've written a bunch of haikus. Tristan, the only person who couldn't be here today, wanted to send us off with some haikus, so he wrote these specifically for us. There's probably better ones out there, but we'll read his. So the first one, he said he wrote about us, so very special. Walking through the woods, 10 environmentalists helping the forest. Very nice. 575. And then from winter to spring, whispers of leaves, birds, and streams singing in the wind. So we can thank Tristan. He's on his way to Italy, so we're jealous of him. Okay, so that is the end of our presentation. Are there any questions from anyone? Okay. Okay.
Good job, everybody. I have a question for Katie. I might have missed it. You probably mentioned, but did you all have a definition for urban? It's a hard question, I know. Ooh,
Okay, so
that's good.
I think what we would define as urban is more like a concentrated amount of people where it's more like built up, and there's a lot of like habitat fragmentation, things like that, where people have really kind of torn down the natural landscape and things like that. And then there's like obviously those high concentrations of people all living together, like in a smaller area. That's how I would define urban.
Anybody else want to answer from the group?
I would also add, I'm like really loud at that than other people, like more impervious structure that we see. So as opposed to rural, where they're with, you know, all the ecosystem services and the trees all day. And here in Fort Worth, we see a lot of urban and roads, pavement, buildings. And so just kind of having the place like the Fort Worth Botanic Garden as it's separate from the urban area that we see. Yeah, I would say impervious. That's my, anyone else want to? Okay, anyone else?
It's for the recording.
Oh, then yes. This was a great job. Thank you so much for coming back and sharing this with all of us. My question is about education. So at the beginning, I think maybe it was a slide, I forgot to take a picture, but for the purposes of education services, part of it as education and working with the community. And then I noticed you didn't have anything in your future work in that area. Is that something you guys have thought of? And if so, what direction would you take that?
I would definitely say that education is always something that we want to keep continuing with. Maybe like also presenting to y'all, but also maybe having more opening up to the visitors to show them about all the ecosystem services, because I feel like you guys know ecosystem services, and the people that come visit the Fort Worth Botanic Garden might not know about, you know, the instrumental and intrinsic values and the difference. So, I mean, maybe just getting them to go to the Southwoods and maybe having signs up. I know just like going through the Botanic Garden, you guys have a lot of educational signs up. So maybe we could come up with something, or the next group of students could come up with things to show about the ecosystem services in the Southwoods, but also the whole Fort Worth Botanic Garden. But education is very important to us, so we would very much like to further that. Yeah, and I would say with the visitors of Fort Worth, focus on them in our next endeavors.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me see. Let's pick. Oh, tell me about identification, because y'all mentioned, and it's sort of a two-part question. So you mentioned what you used for identification, some of the difficulties since you started in the winter and there were no leaves. So first question, tell me about identification. And second, would you have this class staged in the fall rather?
Yeah, so we've definitely talked about that. So when we came, it was February. So there weren't any leaves. So we could kind of tell by the bark, and we started in those A sections, so we could kind of tell that they were mainly ash trees. But as we went further into the more diverse section of the Southwoods, it was hard to, you know, and there's the leaves are on the ground, but you can't tell which tree they're, you know. And so we definitely had to go back, which took a little more time because we had to backtrack. And sometimes it was hard, like, is this the tree we were, you know? So that was more time consuming. And I know we talked about with Dr. Levy, we would definitely have it in the fall first, where we could identify the trees right when we measure the trees, because then we could see the leaves and we wouldn't have to backtrack and it wouldn't be more time consuming.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments on identification?
Okay. It was pretty helpful to take pictures of the bark. You know, you can see the pecan bark is a lot flakier than like an ash tree. Or the ginkgo leaves are pretty obvious on the ground. They're different shape than everything else. But even if we couldn't ID them out in the field, we could take pictures of them with our phones and return back to campus and use like the Sibley book to ID them, or we could get iNaturalists to give us like an idea of what they might be and work from there. So we were able to like note down that we weren't sure in our notebooks, which we just like wrote all the trees we were doing and all the measurements in our notebooks. So we had something to copy them into like Excel and iTree Eco. And just in our notebooks, we were able to note like, this might be the species, but we need to check later on.
And those are the yellow notebooks if you want to hold it.
I can pass it
We all had
around.
that, and that's how we took our measurements, and we wrote all the coordinates of the trees, so we knew exactly which tree we were talking about. We could go back and look at the pictures, or we could use the coordinates to go back to that specific tree when we were here and look at the leaves later on. So our notebooks were very important. someone else might need to answer the question. She asked how many invasive species of trees did we find?
The total, like for specific species or in each, within each species? Yeah. Not the answer.
It depends on what you. So I think it would know non-native that we have there.
I'll repeat what he said. He said the only non-native we had was the ginkgo tree, but it depends on what you define as invasive. The beetle, the emerald ash borer.
Okay, I have a question. That's put together. Okay, so you did most of your work. There were 42 plots, but you did most of your work in those 9, correct? And you found that there were a couple of large tree specimens that were doing the lion's share of the work in terms of when you plug their data into iTree Eco, and they really pulled the averages up, probably, right? Do you then think that if the Fort Worth Botanic Garden was considering making some management changes to that area and maybe thinning out some of the trees, what do you think then could be a good strategy using what you found for as we move through those plots?
I think, yeah, the large trees are really important, but something that we didn't really talk about a lot was the health of all those trees. So that was something that we noticed, that not all the trees were in the perfect health. So I think that would need to be considered very heavily as well. And then, like I said, we only measured trees above 6 dBH. So I think if you wanted to thin those out, there was quite a few trees smaller than that. So by eliminating those, you could still have those larger trees that provide some of the larger statistics of ecosystem services with more walkability.
So like a lot of the grids that we did that weren't in like the A, B, C range, some of them were, which I know like there was a burn that was planned and just didn't execute. But there were a lot of bigger trees like in some of those more remote grids that we weren't able to calculate ecosystem services for because we just couldn't get to them. So like Reese said, kind of getting rid of some of the smaller trees, but then also like I think trying to do like another burn would be really helpful because then you might have more than just like those 2 giant trees that are doing like the bulk of the work, and then it might be easier to kind of see what areas need to have more focus on them, if that makes sense.
Okay, so we also have the university woods, which y'all didn't really get to. And that's where we have a lot of invasive plants like the parasol tree and the privet and other things. So I think it'd be really interesting if maybe next semester or next year you guys did the same thing, repeated everything in the university woods, and then compared the ecosystem services in the more managed, healthier area to the more invasive, non-managed area.
Got a thumbs up and a nod.
I'll spend my Fridays out here. Yes.
Wasn't really a question.
Okay, question for you. Did you take collections of every tree that you sampled? Why? Why did you not?
Did we
Did you
take
make
the
a
species?
collection of every tree you sampled?
Like,
Leaf, stem, like, because normally when we go to the field, we take a collection of everything, because I know I did tree research in the past. And it's really important, in my opinion, just because then you have that example and you add to our herbarium, right? It increases our collection.
So obviously we started in the winter. There weren't really leaves for us to collect then. And also in the interest of time, we only had 3 hours every Friday. And then in addition to like all our other classwork, we don't really have time to like make sure everything is properly done in the amount of time we had this semester. But it would have been really great to start towards the end where everything had leaves and started to bloom. It would have been awesome. Just we don't have the time to do it.
Okay.
Follow-up question to that. So speaking about vouchers, right? That's herbarium specimens, your example, so that you all know when you're talking about a black walnut, you're all talking about the same thing. And so Zoe and Megan, I would love to put y'all both on the spot again and talk a little bit about the volunteer work you're doing with our living collections and the herbarium and how that may help in the future. And maybe what are you doing?
Okay, so both me and Megan and I are volunteering at the gardens to make collections of all the trees that are ID'd at the moment. So with those, people in the future are able to look at the leaves, the blooms, the fruit, and the bark that we collect, which is a collection, and be able to like work from that and to like find more species and just find more information about those trees and what they provide for us and the ecosystem, obviously.
Thank you.
Thanks. All great presentation. I really loved it. And this probably wasn't part of the study, but I'm curious about the general history of the area, or are these all, obviously the ginkgo is not native, but I think almost all the rest are. And we're just wondering if that's kind of composition of the forest that we expected in this area, or if it's been modified heavily. I don't know if any of the trees have been planted. Are these all kind of naturally produced? What's the general nature of the South Woods? I don't know if I heard that, and if I did, I apologize.
I feel like you might be able to.
You don't have to.
I guess the answer is, I don't know. Just looking at other similar bottomland areas, some of the species are representative of that, but a lot of them really aren't. And I can't tell you if, I know some of them are planted. I know there's a stand of magnolias, and obviously the ginkgo was likely planted, but I couldn't really tell you. I'd like to delve more into that and see if we can figure out some more about that. Anything to add?
I have one. So speaking about those values, the aesthetic, the cultural values of being out there, y'all are out there 3 hours every Friday, right? I would love if anyone's interested to talk about your own personal experiences, what you enjoyed, what you saw, if there are funny things you saw, other interactions you saw, other plants you were interested in, animals. I know they move and they're cooler because maybe they move, but plants are cooler because they don't move.
Okay, I can start and then we can pass it. We had to write a reflection, so it's in my mind. I think it was just very important for us to kind of, because we're all environmental science majors, and a lot of people like ask us what we're going to do with that. And some people have an answer, some people don't. So just getting out of our classrooms where we're just like staring at a presentation and doing field work was really important to kind of, I would say, like lift our spirits and like, oh, this is fun. Like I do want to do this. And like, I know personally for me, like I'm an environmental science major, but when I'm studying all day, I'm not outside. So it's just really important to be like, this is why I chose this major. And this is why I want to dedicate my life to this. And it was, I think also important, like, it's going to sound corny, but like the friendships we made, because like some of these people have like sat in class with them all semester and like we never talked. So just like getting those connections was really important to us. We did see a lot of fun animals. We saw hawks, snakes, lizards, what? I don't know what they're saying. Herons. Yeah, it was just, we loved the koi fish. We would feed them sometimes. So this was my favorite class I've ever taken, just because we were outside and we were doing field work, and all the presentations that we got. It was really cool to see the different jobs that we could strive for, because I feel like environmental science jobs are so diverse and you don't really know about them like as a major. So it was really like, I would, after like, just look more into the jobs that people had or jobs related to that. And yeah, it was just really fun, and I would love to do it again, but I won't be here next fall.
I'm kind of going to say a similar thing. This was also definitely my favorite class. As somebody who learns best by doing things instead of just listening, you kind of get worn out by just hearing things on repeat. I don't think I've learned as much as I have with my other classes as I have with this class. And then, like I said, it's truly like the friendships we made along the way. We drove here together and back to the campus, even though it's only 2 miles away. Sometimes it was a 30-minute drive every Friday, and that was really great. And yeah, it was really cool to see everything. I think a lot of us can say for this, I've been here for 3 years now, and this class was the first time I had ever come to the Botanic Garden. So it was just really introducing me to something that's right down the road, and I was able to bring my friends and then bring my mom. So it was really great.
So kind of sound like a broken record, but obviously like we don't, because TC is located in Fort Worth, we don't have many chances to like do field work. So I definitely thought that was like really interesting about this class and why I wanted to take it. But also I think it was really interesting because like I didn't know like what field work was. I'm not gonna lie. So I thought it was really interesting, and then also like there's just like fun stuff that happens. Like I'll never forget like crossing like a river with Zoe. And like that's just like a core memory that I'll always have. Like even though like my life path, I probably won't have an environmental science job, but it's something that like I just think we were able to actually see like the cultural benefits like it has like on your mental health and things like that. And so that's something that I really enjoyed.
Also, Zoe fell into the river for that story.
Okay, kind of going off what they said as well. Since we do live in Fort Worth and it's a very urban area, I don't get many chances, especially in my courses, to get to go outside and experience nature. So I definitely think that spending so much time on our Friday mornings in nature really reminded me of how much nature grounds us and makes me feel at ease and improves my mental health. So I definitely, reflecting back on that, know how I need to go and spend more time outdoors and really try to reconnect myself with the nature around us. And then something kind of different than they've talked about, I think my favorite part of this whole experience was we were able to hear a lot of speakers and different talks from professionals in the industry, and really getting to pick their brains and kind of learn what they have to say about all of this, I think was one of my favorite parts, because I haven't really been in this area, I would say, for very long. So I didn't know much about the Botanic Garden or ecosystem services of trees before this course. And so I just want to reiterate that I'm very grateful for the partnerships that we got to have with all of these people.
Not to sound like a broken record again, but I think we all had a universal, like, great experience out here. The corny friendships, the funny memories, and again, like Audrey said, we're environmental science majors that don't get outside enough. And it does kind of suck, but this felt like a new spin. It really grounded me. And like, it just confirmed that I do want to be outside and I want to be giving back. And I want to be doing something that seems trivial to other people that aren't in this realm. But this was the best class I've taken here at TCU.
Kind of similar experiences to everyone else, but like Katie said, this was also my first time really getting to do like actual field work. So it was really great to just have the opportunity to apply the things that I've been learning in the classroom all these years and get to do like some hands-on work, which was really great. And
Then I also loved the chance getting to hear from all of our different speakers throughout the semester, and about just like the work that they do here every day. And kind of, it was also really good to hear about like kind of their journey and like the different jobs that they've had to get here, because it helped me to think about like what my opportunities might be when I graduate and where I might end up. So that was really great. And it also, I feel like as a junior, so I've been studying environmental science for 3 years, and it's something I'm very passionate about, but you kind of like lose that just like being in the classroom like every day. You kind of forget why you're doing what you're doing. So getting to go out into the field has really like amplified my passion and reminded me about like why I chose to do this. So
I had a bit of a hard time on the field just because I'm terrified of snakes. So moving around the woods was kind of like scary, but I did really enjoy it. Thank you, Dr. Levy, because this is my last environmental class, and I'm really happy it was this. I really enjoy it with my classmates and going out and see what the future holds as a future graduate. So I'm excited.
Fieldwork was rough for me. I fell in the river. I had a snake fall on me. I think I found every hole in the forest to trip on. I learned how important it was to wear long sleeves and pants so I didn't get scratched up with all of the thorny vines on those trees. But I really did have so much fun being out in the woods and like IDing those trees and being with everyone. It was just so much fun, and like made me realize, this is like this is gonna be my future. I love doing this. So it was awesome to do.
Yes, definitely. I think the fieldwork was my favorite part, and all of this was amazing, especially like I love being involved with like the gardens and kind of getting to see all of those other perspectives with the presentations and kind of all the different types of jobs and opportunities that we have through this type of work. And then also definitely the field work and being able to learn like hands-on and out of the classroom was a really good experience. And kind of being allowed to like work on this project somewhat independently in groups, and then being able to make mistakes and figure things out kind of along the way on our own. So
Thank you.
Okay, so I think if there aren't any more questions, did you have? Oh.
So as you guys were talking, getting kind of almost emotional just hearing you guys's experience, and that's really what it's kind of all about for us, to share our knowledge and the garden with you guys and to give you those experiences. So you guys should be really proud of yourselves for what you did this semester, and I'm sure Dr. Levy is very proud also. So.
And y'all might not have noticed, but we have several VPs in the audience. I don't want to point them out and make you too embarrassed, but we've got our VP of research here and our VP of marketing and communications. And in particular, I really appreciated how y'all's presentation included those kind of translated into 13 bison or 25,000, road trips back and forth. Those are the kinds of things that we will take probably verbatim and put them on our socials, put those on signs. So they did this class you guys did a great job of, doing the hard level scientific work, plugging it in, translating it, but it's that extra little component. Like if we're the client, giving you the tangible thing to say, okay, this is the value of this area in your garden. You know, you could get away with doing some management things, but if you focus on the largest trees, et cetera, all the kinds of things you said, but also that last little, it's education, right? It's community outreach coming to talk to us, and that further education component by saying, here's an easy thing you can sell to your members or sell to the public or sell to higher ups when we're making decisions about, do we put a tram route through the middle of the woods or on the exterior of the woods? And, you know, what are the consequences of that? So translating it into dollars, translating it into something fun, that's always great. So you just hit it out of the park. And special thank you again to Dr. Levy about having the idea and the courage, I guess, to come to us with this and set this up. And I hope that we do this again every semester, right? Okay. All right. Well, thanks again to everybody.